Happy Sabbath. Good morning. I'll start with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly God, Lord, the beginning of this service, we come before you to pray for a blessing upon this hour of study. We pray that you guide and direct our thoughts and our conversations, if we have any. Guide my thoughts and my words. And I pray, Lord, that I pray for the technique, the connection, everything will be working out this morning. We pray for all those that are fellowshipping this morning together, to bless them, those around the world within our movement, trying to receive a blessing in studying your word and getting to know you better. And I pray that you all bless them as you bless us. We pray that you guide and direct the studies, and that we will have an increase of knowledge on who you are and what you expect from us in this time. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Good morning. This morning I'm presenting the title of my presentation. I think that's the one that I thought of, is 2021 to the Sunday Law. I want to talk about that dispensation. That is the focus of my study. I'm not going to talk about 2021 necessarily. I'm not going to talk about the Sunday Law necessarily. I actually want to talk about what's in between. And primarily, I think we were going to talk about the first way mark, the increase of knowledge, as we would call it. So usually when we have a dispensation and we say this is 2021 and this is the Sunday Law, we mark two way marks in between. We say it's the increase of knowledge and the formalization of the message. We also call it Boston, Concord, and Exeter, and then there's a closed door. That's the structure that you find in all the dispensations, or all the dispensations in our lines. And this is the focus of my study this morning. I'm going to start soon. I'm going to start just a reminder shortly on 2021. I think Elder Tess has done a proper studies actually, on 2021. Within our group, we have revised. We went over them a couple of weeks ago. So I'm not going into those details, but I'll start here. I want to talk about the structure a little bit more, and then I'm going to dive into the increase of knowledge. We know at the moment within the movement there is, I think, several messages going around, several ideas about how we deal with this dispensation, and especially how we deal with the Sunday Law. When is the Sunday Law? What is the Sunday Law, etc. There have been ideas. We know, for example, Elder Terry's presentation placing the Sunday Law in 2024. There is people that point the Sunday Law in 2025. I have been talking on that part in my previous presentation a few weeks ago. There's other people suggesting that the increase of knowledge is 2024, for example. So there is several ideas, and they're all built upon certain logic and structure. And I want to touch on all of those a little bit, just to put them next to each other to see what differences they have, why they are there. And then I want to give my thoughts on this way, Mark. I think that's what we're primarily going to do. So 2021, like I said, 𝗿𝗏𝗃 did several presentations on it, and I'm going to do it in 2 minutes. At least that's what I hope. But 2021 is a big year. You can look to 2021 in several ways, but we call it, for example, Panium, or we call it the Midnight Cry, or we call it Beneventum. Beneventum is on the line of Pyrrhus. So what we get from those studies, for example, Beneventum was the last battle of Pyrrhus in Italy. He lost that battle. It was a battle that was initiated by the King of the North, and it was also won by the King of the North. So 2021, we remember 2021. It was the year internally in the United States with January 6th, the impeachment of Donald Trump, then the inauguration of Joe Biden. We have the beginning of the investigations of the Department of Justice in America, investigating the January 6th insurrection, and everything that led up to that. There's many things in 2021 happening, but I think those are the ones, very important events. But what we mark is that Joe Biden started his presidency, and straight from the beginning, he was clear to Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, so like, hey, if you want to have support, if you want to, we can only take you serious if you start working on the corruption in your country. So Zelensky took that started working and started I think it was 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃, one of an oligarch in Ukraine who owned 3 television stations which were pro-Russian. Those television stations were taken down. 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃 was arrested, and later that year was also charged. 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃 was a personal friend of Putin, and Putin took this as an attack on himself. And so that all took place in February, the arrest and the taking down of the television station. In March, we see a military buildup of Putin at the border of Ukraine. March, April, June, we see this military buildup. There's thousands of military of soldiers at the border with all the material, with all the equipment, military equipment at the border of Ukraine. Then we see this stop. We see a slight, how do you say, they retreat. And then in October in the same year, we see a second buildup, a military buildup, which we now know led to the invasion in February 2022. So the interesting thing is that it was instigated by Biden. Biden said, do something about the oligarchs, the corruption in your country. And so Zelensky started working. And that was the spark, the starting point for the King of the South, Putin, to come into action. So we have the battle between the King of the North and the King of the South. The King of the North started. The King of the South reacted. The interesting thing is, and you can also see here the television stations taking down. It's actually about information. It's an information war. You see that here in the first event, but we can see that also later on in the year. And I think that is a crucial element in this year, is that Biden starts to become very clear on the intentions of Vladimir Putin. Because even far away into 2021, even into 2022, many European nations, France, Germany, like Macron and Scholz, I think was then already Bundeskanzler. He was. They were very of the mindset of talking with Putin. They still believed you can talk with this guy. He's still flexible. There is still. He's a little strange. He has some way of working that probably should not do, but you can still talk with him. You can talk him out of this. And Biden started already early in 2021, especially, not necessarily early, but somewhere in the summer and the later month of 2021, Biden started to say, he's going to invade. This is going to be serious. Don't talk with Putin. We need to prepare for war because he is going to invade. And there was intelligences from CIA or FBI, CIA, I think, which he immediately released. So like, they're going to invade. They're going to use this kind of weapons. It was... 𝗷𝗚_𝗃 has read articles on it that it was as never seen before in the time period of Bush, in the time period of Bush and the Iraq War. America was very how do you say that? They did the same thing. They used the intelligences and misled also other nations doing so. And they used intelligences to go into war, not go into war. And they have been wrong in this time period. So since the Iraq War, releasing intelligences is not the favorite thing of a president because nobody really trusted the USA anymore so much as before. So Obama never really dared to do it. But it is a technique. It's a tactic that is actually Russian to have to influence your opponent by releasing information about your opponent, and actually that's the information warfare. That's the elephant in the Battle of Pyrrhus. So we have the elephants, and that's the other thing. Beneventum was lost because the elephants that Pyrrhus used turned their back and destroyed his own army, or there were one or two or several elephants. They turned around and trampled over the army of Pyrrhus. So it was here where we see Biden using the same techniques as Putin has been doing for many years, like the information warfare. And now he's using it against Putin, and successfully. And I think in this time period here, so this is 2021 and before, we see that the Western world is very divided in how to, or no, let me say it this way. The Western world is the people that are, let's say the Western world, they try to talk with Putin still. Even after 2014, after the invasion of Crimea, Putin has been on many summits or G7s or G20s or whatever. People visited Moscow, or Putin has been in France or in the US or wherever. Putin was just one of the guys. And it took the invasion. The invasion was necessary to open the eyes of the world. It's like, okay, Putin is really crazy. You cannot talk with this guy. And what I'm suggesting is that, so what you see here is, actually, it says before this time period, we see that the people, that Biden was the only one, especially in 2021, Biden was the only one saying, Putin is going to invade, don't trust him. And the rest of the world was like, we're not so sure. We still have hope that we can talk with him and that we can talk him out of it. And then the invasion started, and then everybody realized, okay, this is wrong. Putin is you cannot talk with him. He was serious, and he actually invaded. Sorry, I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to this. Sorry, I need to organize my because actually didn't want to start here, but not going to the details here. I wanted to leave that for later, but we're getting this. So this is 2021 in relation to the King of the North and the King of the South, and also USA internal when we talk about January 6th, the second impeachment of Trump, and the investigations regarding January 6th. So I'm saying, or 𝗷𝗃𝗃𝗃 has been saying, 2021 was about the information warfare. Was the information warfare that was going on between Biden and Putin, and I think it had its peak, its momentum in October when Biden started to be very clear, but you also had the release of the Panama Papers, this a release of secret information. Let me see, October. The release of the Panama Papers, and I think it was 11.9 million documents. I thought it was nice that it's 11.9, but it was released in October of that year, and it gave a lot of input also in the financial and power structures within Russia. So if you want to put sanctions on Russia, then these documents gave you a clear insight on who you should attack, who you should sanction, who has the power, who has the money, etc. So it was it was also information released that was really beneficial for Biden in this case, for the King of the North, to sanction the King of the South if that was necessary. And that's what they did then later when the invasion happened. All right. So I actually want to go into this way, Mark, like I said, the characteristics of concord. So 𝗷𝗃𝗃𝗃 has been saying, and I think we talked about it last week in Annabeth's presentation shortly, is that when you look at the line of the, I'll do it here. So pre-Levite methonyms. So this is 14, 16, 18, 19, 19, 20, 21, 21. And then we are here in our dispensation, Sunday law. So this is Boston, Concord, Exeter, Boston, Concord, Exeter, Boston, Concord, Exeter. So we have been, in 2016, we saw a concord here, a concord between Putin and Donald Trump. They worked together behind the scenes, you could say. They also influenced the elections. Trump did that through the agency Cambridge Analytica, and the way Cambridge Analytica worked was revealed by its CEO in 2016 on a summit, on a conference, which was called 𝗂𝗽𝗴𝗲𝗏. And Putin works through the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, a Russian organization. And this organization is funded, financially funded, by another business, which is called Concord Consultancy Agency, or consultancy. So you see Concord here in both sides, Trump and Putin. You have organizations, or here a summit, influencing the 2016 elections. 2020 lines up, I'm not going into that, but lines up in the story or in the studies of the revolutions, lines up with Concord and Lexington, which was in 1775. It was the turning point in the American Revolution. And it was the battle that instigated or started the American Revolution. It marked the beginning of it. And in that battle, 273 people died, at least on the British side. But the number 273 we see here at this battle. And it was Concord and Lexington. And that lines up with the waymark after 2019, 2020. So now we have our Concord here. And question is, and that's a question that we have now in the movement, is when is Concord? What is Concord? What does our dispensation look like? And one of the things that 𝗏𝗏 has suggested in the video that we actually reviewed last week, talking about 𝗃𝗃𝗴𝗏, I think it was a review of 𝗃𝗃𝗴𝗏. What she mentioned is that here, 2016 was an election year. 2020 is an election year. So you see here the characteristics. You see we can have a thread, 2016, 2020. So Concord, in that logic, you could perhaps expect that it is an election year. So there's people in the movement having suggested that Concord is an election year and then must be this year, 2024. Question mark. So that is one of the logics that has been used to mark Concord of our dispensation in 2024. So then another question rises, and I thought this is also interesting, is that when you look at the distance between all the waymarks that we have since 2014, you see that it jumps from 14 to 16 to 18. So there's 2 years in between, from 2 years, 2 years, now 18 to 19. So here we start to go from 2 years to 1 year. And then it's 19 to 20, it's 1 year, 20 to 21. And then here even within the same year, 2021, 2021. So you see that the distances get narrower. And we've always been using this quote from Ellen White, that it's 9 Testimonies 11, Testimonies 9, page 11, where she says, the agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. So maybe there's other quotes or paragraphs that you could use to say that the final movements are rapid ones. And that's what we also have this imagery of the birth pangs or the woes, the birth pangs. It is when you get to the end, they become heavier and they come shorter in frequency more often. So that has been the logic so far always to say the distances actually between the events or the waymarks, the important events, are getting shorter. It's going to be something that is happening quickly the more we get to the end. So to have 2024 here suddenly, so you go from 14, 16, 18 to 19, 20, 21, 21, and then is it suddenly 3 years later? So is it now 3 years? Question mark. Well, that's the argument you could use against 2024 being the increase of knowledge or being conquered for this waymark. Just something to think about. So what I'm suggesting when it comes to this waymark, and I think many others in the movement have done that as well. Elder Terry did it in her presentations on the Sunday law, and I think I heard others saying it as well, is that Concord is 2022. That has been, that is going to be my suggestion. And Elder Terry in her presentation mentioned June 24, or the 24th of June, 2022. So does anybody remember the date? What was important there?
Overthrow of Roe v. Wade?
Yes, the overthrow of Roe v. Wade. That is 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗄 Jackson.
Right.
It was a court case that was, we talked about it in my last presentation a few weeks ago, where I made a case that was an important thing because, or an important court case, because I made a parallel with 1863 and slavery. I don't know if you remember when I cut the line of X27, I cut the line, and then I put the beginning of the line and on top of each other, and then 2021 lined up with 1863. And what you see is, so 1863 was a midpoint between 1861 and 1865. And I was suggesting that 2021 was a midpoint between between 2020 and 2022, because in 2020 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗲 Jackson was introduced to the Supreme Court. In 2021 they heard the arguments, and in 2022 it was decided. Anyway, that's in my previous presentation. I don't want to go into that again. So this it has been suggested that the 24th of June 2022 is the increase of knowledge or BOSS or Concord for our waymark. And the interesting thing is that it lines up with the final presentation of Elder Tess's Vespers. So in this period, it's a little too small. 𝗂𝗽𝗴𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Um, 24 question mark, and anders is it 24 of June. I don't know. Okay. So if we go to that time period, so this is Ennium, Sunday law, and we're saying, okay, increase of knowledge. It is often the case that actually always that a waymark is not just a point. It's not one date. It's usually a period. It's maybe several events, or it's a period of time. And I actually agree that it is the 24th of June 2022, but it doesn't. It's not the only thing. So I'm suggesting that it starts in February, and then it, for the internalizer, this is internal within our movement, and that it ends there in June, because we have from February to June, we have the Vespers from Elder Tess. I think for me, actually, when I think about it, it's almost the strongest proof for the fact that this is the increase of knowledge. I'm suggesting that this is the increase of knowledge, because the Vesper series was such a powerful series that we as a movement needed. It was the Vespers tried to answer the question how to sift the left wing. How do we sift the left wing? And I think that was the main question that needed to be answered. But for that question to be answered, it was necessary to actually first question what is actually left and right. What is the difference between left and right? And so we went into the right wing and their ideas, and the left wing and their ideas, and what is the difference. So we found that you have equality over freedom, you have freedom over equality. That is actually the thing that divides left and right. And then you have far right and you have far left. And I think she gave us enough. She gave us enough for us now to decide to be able to sift, to know how to sift the left wing. And I think that was necessary for us to receive in our journey to the Sunday law. So for me, I think for the movement, this was a very important time period, February to June. And that very last presentation she did in this Vesper series was on June 24, on the 7th. And on the same day, Roe v. Wade was overturned. So internally, I'm suggesting this time period is the increase of knowledge. Confirmed by the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗃 Jackson court case. Another thing that is important when it comes to 2021 and the Sunday law is that we have this it's not only internal within the movement, but we do not only talk about internally in the United States, but we also look at in the warfare, you can say, talking in terms of the Second World War, you have Western Front and Eastern Front. So Western Front is internal within the United States. Eastern Front is the relationship King of the North, King of the South, that battle. So also in here, we need to see a development taking place that need to line up with those waymarks. So what I'm suggesting is when it comes to, so this is, so this line was the internal movement. So that's the movement line for that waymark. So I'm suggesting the following. In 2021, so now we come back to where I talked about just before, is In 2021 and before, the whole world believed you could talk with Putin. They met him, they shook hands with him, they visited each other. It was all fine. Maybe it was not fine, but everybody believed in some way that there was some reasonableness in Putin. And Biden was the first to say that you couldn't trust him. You could not trust him. He is dangerous. He's going to invade. It doesn't work. So Biden was the first one saying that, and it took the invasion for the others to realize that actually Biden was right. So the invasion of Russia into Ukraine was also in February. It was on February 24th of 2022. So you have on February 24th in 2022, you see the invasion. And actually, 3 days before, the 21st.
Why do you say 2022?
It is 2022.
It's the 24th of February, 2022.
But you are the waymark. Oh.
So also 2022.
Moet ik hem anders omschrijven?
No. In the waymark above, it's February 2021.
No, 2022.
No, sorry. This is the year 2020. This is 2022 here.
That's right. Oh, okay.
This is
Perfectly.
2020.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Of course.
So this is also 2022. So planning was 2021, and then increase of knowledge, the events within internal and the movement took place in 2022. What we see is that the invasion also started in February. It was February 24th. Interesting thing, and I think that is also an interesting part of this thread or this story, is that on the 21st, we see Putin declares those 3 provinces of eastern Ukraine, Luhansk, Donetsk, Lugansk, the Donbass area. I don't know if I pronounced all those names correctly, but at least those provinces, Russia declared those provinces as independent nations. That was on the 21st, and then the 24th, he invades Ukraine on the east to go for those provinces. But important also, I think, is Putin also went for Kiev. I think many, if not most, of the military, the army went for Ukraine through Belarus. That mission failed, so they didn't go, or they didn't reach Kiev. So they needed to turn back, and then they went to the other military front in the east. But I think an important point is that Putin went for whole Ukraine. He wanted to change the government in Ukraine to make it a more pro-Russian government, and then take the eastern part of Ukraine and then settle it and done. That failed. So now he's in a war with Ukraine. And I think the interesting thing, what I want to suggest, no, before I go there. So 2024, so 21st, there's this declaration, 24th, there's the invasion. And then I want to go, this is the line I would suggest of the United Nations Security Council. So the United Nations Security Council is a council within the United Nations that deals with security issues worldwide. They come together. So this is where I can go into much of details, but I should probably not do that because that's going to take me a lot of time. I think everybody should have some working knowledge on how the United Nations works. Just a bit, at least. The United Nations Security Council is a council or a committee, so to speak, or a council with 15 members, and only 5 of them are permanent members. And the permanent members of the Security Council are 2 European nations, UK and France, then you have China, you have Russia, and the United States. Those are the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, and those 5 members have a veto power. So they can use their, so if they're coming together, if the Security Council comes together, they usually come together if there is some safety issue, some security issue within the world, there's a conflict that needs to be solved, and the United Nations needs to deal with it or needs to say something about it, then the United Nations Security Council comes together and vote to be involved or not involved, or the conflict should stop or whatever. They take a position. And so the United Nations Security Council comes together on the 25th on this issue. Like I said, there's 5 permanent members. The US and Russia are in there, China, France, and the UK. And the other 10 members are other nations, and they rotate every 1 or 2 years. So on the 25th, the United Nations Security Council comes together because of the invasion of Ukraine. They say like, okay, we need to deal with this. I think it's America who instigated this coming together of the Security Council together with another nation. They come together and they say, and the statement basically was, this invasion needs to stop immediately. This cannot, this is against, this cannot. This is an independent nation, you cannot invade it, etc. So they're going to vote for it. And then Russia uses its veto power to block it, because the United Nations Security Council only can take a position when it's in unanimity. What's the word?
Unanimous.
When they are unanimous on it. You can say yes, you can say no, or you can stay out of the vote, so to speak. So withdraw, or how do you? There's word for it. Doesn't matter. So they vote for it, and Russia uses its veto power to block this resolution. And actually, that is against the rules, because when you go to the United Nations Charter, the Charter is basically the constitution of the United Nations, where all the rules and how the United Nations operates is documented. There's an article, Article 27, where it talks about the Security Council. It says, Article 27 says, the first article, point 1, says, each member of the Security Council shall have 1 vote. So in another article, it's probably dealt with that the Security Council has 15 seats and 5 permanents, etc. But then Article 27 says, when they come together to vote on a security issue, each member of the Security Council shall have 1 vote. And then point 2 says, decisions of the Security Council on procedural matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 9 members. So there's different matters that you can vote on. You can vote on a procedural matter, which is basically saying you can vote for, shall we ask committee XYZ to talk about this? So then it is a procedural matter. So they are going to organize something within the United Nations to talk about it. And you cannot veto such matters, such votes. And 9 members need to have an affirmative vote to pass it. But this vote is not a procedural matter. This is actually really a security matter. So in point 3, it says decisions of the Security Council on all other matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 9 members, including the concurring vote of the permanent members. So the permanent members must have a affirmative vote. If one permanent member does not agree and they say no, they vote no, then the resolution will not pass. It will not go through. But the interesting thing is in the same point 3 also says, if a party is part of the dispute, a party to a dispute shall abstain from voting. So if the voting is about an issue in Russia, then Russia is not allowed to vote on the issue, because that would be a little, well, in this case, Russia was part of the vote and Russia should not have voted, but they did and nobody complained about it. And the problem is that the United Nations has, since the beginning of its existence, ignored this rule. America has used it in the time period of Vietnam War, for example, or that yeah, this rule has never been really taken serious, and now Russia is using it. So like, we're going to vote anyway, even though the rule says if you're part of a dispute, you shall abstain from voting. So America or the Russia blocks this vote with their veto power, and this resolution does not pass. So there is no official statement from the United Nations Security Council which says this war is wrong and should immediately stop. Give me 1 second. There is, though, I want to share my screen and show you a video, because the rest of the United Nations Security Council is angry, basically. And they say like, yeah, wait a minute. This cannot be done by Russia. Russia can't just do this. It's a little slow, I'm sorry. So I'm going to share my screen on this, hopefully. Share sound also. Ja, 𝗶𝗲𝗴𝗲𝗿 ja. Okay, share. Okay, you can share. See my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is so what you see here is the Security Council, the meeting hall, so to speak. The first part, you see the voting. I don't think there's much commentary. So you see people vote yes, or you see no. Then you see one guy putting up his hand. That's the one from Russia. And then after that, they all come together and they take a general position. It's like, oh, I'll just play it.
Russia has abused its power today to veto our strong resolution, but Russia cannot veto our words. And as I said in the council, Russia cannot veto the Ukrainian people. Russia cannot veto their own people protesting this war in the streets. And Russia cannot veto the UN Charter. Russia cannot and will not veto accountability.
Документе С-2022-155
Their person. Raise their hand.
Кто против?
Those against?
Against Russia. Against.
Кто воздержался?
Abstentions?
Abstain from voting. China.
Результаты
Result
голосования.
of the voting is as follows.
11 голосов
11
за,
votes in favor,
1 голос
1 vote
против,
against,
3 воздержался.
3 abstentions.
Проект резолюции
The
не
draft
принимается,
resolution
поскольку
has not been adopted,
голосовал постоянный
owing to the
член.
negative vote of a
The Security Council voted on a resolution to hold Russia accountable for its aggression against Ukraine. to protect civilians, including children, and call for the facilitation of rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian assistance to those in need. The resolution.
So I'll leave it here. She continues talking and arguing why they are actually against this war, and so they decide to stand up actually against it. So this was on February 25th, so the day after the invasion, and what I'm suggesting, and that's actually, I need to introduce that before I say that. When we talk about this waymark, we say there is this X27 marks it as the number 273, remember? And 273 brought us to the year 273 BC, in the year. And in 273 BC, we see that Egypt sends its ambassadors to Rome because Rome just defeated the king of the south. So Rome defeated the king of the south, and it was the first time Rome came into history and was basically recognized by a main empire like Egypt. It's like Egypt said, like, hey, we need to keep an eye on Rome. If you're able to defeat Pyrrhus, we need to take them serious. So they send ambassadors to recognize basically Rome as an equal or as an independent, powerful nation. That was 273 BC.
Egypt sends to Rome.
Egypt sends ambassadors to Rome, yes, because Rome just defeated Pyrrhus.
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is that Egypt in prophetic language is a symbol for the world. Egypt is a symbol for the world, and the world here, I would suggest, is let me say it this way. So you have the king of the north and the king of the south. That's Putin, or USA and Russia, or Biden and Putin. Biden just defeated the king of the south. Biden defeated the king of the south, or Putin, in an information war in 2021. Biden said, don't trust Putin, don't trust Putin, he's going to invade. Nobody believed him, but they believed him here on February 24, February 25, they stated it. It's like, oh, they didn't say it this way, but basically they said, actually, you were right. And the whole world, or everybody that is not in the sphere of influence of Russia, stood up against it. And it's like, hey, this cannot be. We cannot trust Putin any longer. So I'm suggesting that this standing up of the United Nations Security Council, or even NATO, we didn't talk about NATO yet, but also on the same day, February 25, NATO comes together. It was an organization that was not unified at all. It actually was a long time in the media already discussed. NATO is not powerful, is divided on many subjects. Nobody is putting enough money in it, and everybody is divided on issues. And then the invasion comes, and everybody appears united against, okay, this is what unites them. They have at least a common enemy. So you see, even a NATO is revived or united. They come into concord. So what I'm suggesting is that the world, or the Western world, or the world that is not in the sphere of influence of Russia, comes into concord against Russia. And now they recognize actually that Biden was right. And they said, and they give credits basically to Biden. It's like, okay, you were right anyway. What you did here, what you said there was actually correct. I'm suggesting that is Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome. This is where they finally stand up. It's like, okay, yes, now we understand. And they are at concord. So that's also what this waymark is, concord. The Western world now is in concord against Russia. And they were not in concord because Macron or the German chancellor, a month before, they still visited Moscow and tried to talk with Putin. And that changed, all that mindset changed in February after the invasion. And they came in concord, I'm suggesting. The other thing is, what I just read, the United Nations Security Council, what I just read from the, I always forget the word, the charter of the United Nations, which is the Constitution. I read from, what I did is I read from Article 27.3. Article 27.3 is the article where it says that nations come together in the Security Council to vote on security issues, and that the 5 members have a veto power, but if a nation is part of the conflict, you're not allowed to vote. That is Article 27.3, and that article is broken. It was already broken, but it was at least broken here on this day by Russia. So 2 days after, on the 27th, the Security Council comes together again to vote now for a procedural matter. That means they are going to vote and say like, okay, there is this escape that the Security Council has, or the United Nations has. If the Security Council cannot agree on an issue, then the General Assembly of the United Nations still has the power to come together on the same issue and have a vote there. But the Security Council needs to bring it to the General Assembly. So General Assembly, I hope everybody is aware or knows what the General Assembly is. In short, I would compare it to the General Assembly is the House of Representatives in the United Nations, so to speak. This is the assembly. This is the part where all the nations are united. It's I think, yeah. So the Security Council comes together on the 27th, and now they vote and say like, okay, we want to bring this issue in the General Assembly. Russia is against it again. Is against it again. But this procedural vote you cannot veto. So the majority agrees, and it goes through to the General Assembly. And then there are several meetings in March. So we have March the 2nd, and March 24, April 7, October 12, and November 14, October 12, November 14, and even in March the next year, they have several meetings within the General Assembly dealing with the war, the invasion, and it was called the United Nations General Assembly, and then it's called an emergency special session. And that's not necessarily one session. In this case, it is actually 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The United Nations Security Council, they also come together here again on the issue on September the 30th of 2022. So in September, 30th of September, the United Nations Security Council comes together, and now they are going to vote, because what happened on September 30, we see Putin. No, before I go there, we see the invasion, we see the war taking place, but it fails. They don't get into Kiev. So they need to withdraw from there, and then they start taking continue the battle on the eastern front or on the eastern border of Ukraine. But even that doesn't really as expected, doesn't go actually as expected. They don't take that much land as they wanted. And actually, I need to go to my notes here for that. Let's use this on September 11. So on September 11, we see that Ukraine takes back the city of Kharkiv. So they lost that city somewhere here in the early time of the invasion time period. But now Ukraine starts to come back and starts to take back areas or big cities. Kharkiv is taken back. And in November 9, Ukraine takes back the city of Kherson. So you see in this time period here that Ukraine starts to become stronger and even starts to take back cities or land from the areas that Russia took in the beginning. So now Putin starts to become a little nervous. And even before he took those whole provinces, because he declared those provinces here on the 21st, he declared them independent. And actually, he wanted to take them to Russia. He wanted to have Kiev. He wanted to have a pro-Russian government in Kiev. He wanted to take those eastern provinces and then settle the whole thing. But now he sees that Kharkiv is taken back, and Ukraine is taking back many other villages. So in September 30, suddenly Putin declares, there's a big feast in Moscow on September the 30th. There's a feast where they celebrate the annexation of those provinces that he declared independent here. So now he annexes those provinces to Russia. So now they're officially part of Russia, and now people that live there are supposed to be Russians. So nobody accepts that annexation except, I think, North Korea or something. But the thing is, it's actually crazy because I think more of half of those provinces are not even part of the territory that they own. They're still battling they're still in the middle of a battle, and half of those provinces are not even taken by the Russians yet. And they see now even that they need to withdraw from certain areas. So they start to get a little nervous. So now, basically what Putin tries to save his face a little bit and say like, okay, we're going to celebrate this in Russia. This is a big party. We take those provinces and we save those from those Nazi government in Kiev. So they annex those provinces to Russia. So September 30, the Security Council comes together and say like, we cannot accept this annexation. And of course, what happens? We see Article 27.3 is broken again because Russia vetoes it, and the resolution is not accepted. So what I'm suggesting is that on this line, those events, and especially I want to mark. Do I have another color? No. I think I should mark 21st to the 23rd. Oh, sorry, the 21st to September 30 as the period of the increase of knowledge. for this time period. So it's still 2022. This one starts also in February. It's all the way to, you could argue, September. This one in June. This one a little longer. But it's still 2022, and I think this is the thread that I would like to mark, as the invasion is basically Putin received a deadly wound here in 2021, and he's going to be killed in Argos or Sunday Law. So everything that you see in between is, I would suggest, at least a way to the death. So I think this invasion is part of the death of the King of the South, and is illustrated on September the 30th, where he kind of tries to save his face by saying we were successful, but he actually failed everything that he wanted to. He wanted to take Kiev, he wanted to take the eastern provinces, and nothing worked out. We have the symbol 273 here. We have Article 27.3 here at the beginning, and we have it here, Article 27.3 at the end, and September 30. It's when the Security Council comes together again. Oh, and September the 30th is the 273rd day of the year. Anyway, 73rd day of the year, if that is of that year. But actually of every year, except 𝗃𝗶𝗴𝗲𝗏. Well, how do you say that in English? But yeah, anyway, that's
What happened on day 273 since the invasion?
I have no idea. I don't know. So let's go to my notes. Yeah, I would like to go and move to another subject, because what I'm suggesting is that we need to mark the increase of knowledge on several lines, in several stories. We mark it internally within the movement. We mark it internally in America. But we also mark it in the battle between the King of the North and the King of the South. Which I think is illustrated, among other things, is illustrated in this line. So the other thing that I want to look at is internally in America. Let's do that here. See how far we get. So we have 2021 as being Hennium. So we have January 6th there. We have January 6th. We have January 13. This is the impeachment of Trump. And we have January 20, which is the inauguration of Biden. I think all significant events in that year or even in that month. So like I said, and in the previous presentation, that the abortion law in 2022 are of significance. Maybe I should start with the other line, actually. So in 2020, 𝗃𝗶𝗴𝗲𝗏 Jackson is introduced to the Supreme Court. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗃 Jackson. Introduced to the Supreme Court. I actually want to go further back, but I'll leave it. No, I'm not leaving it, but I'll just. In 1973, we have Roe v. Wade. It's the court case, also Supreme Court case, that gives the abortion rights, secures the abortion rights in America. There's several other. There's also the court case Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992, which is another important court case that establishes or even confirms Roe v. Wade and even makes it a little stronger. Then there's several other court cases after that that confirm Roe v. Wade or Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 2007, and also in 2016 when even RBG was still in the court. It was the last time she could vote for it, when 2016. Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt, I think it's called. Anyway, there were several court cases before at the Supreme Court about abortion, and they all confirmed or even established or confirmed that Roe v. Wade was okay. That they agreed with Roe v. Wade. And then in 2020, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗃 v. Jackson comes to the Supreme Court. But now we know the Supreme Court has changed because of new judges. In 2021, in September, so this is still September the 1st, 2021, so this is still 2021, we have the Texas Heartbeat Act. It's a law. It's an act that tries to forbid abortions as soon as the heartbeat of the cells, as soon as the heartbeat is recognizable, and that's approximately after 6 weeks. So they try to ban abortion after 6 weeks. So this is causing a lot of how do you say that? Uproar in the United States, at least on the Democratic side. So the Democrats come together in the House of Representatives, and they try to introduce and I think we talked about that before last week or a few weeks ago, the Women's Health Protection Act. I think they vote for it in September. I don't have a date here. Also in September, but it's after the Texas Heartbeat Act. So it's basically a response on this, and it's more symbolic. They just want to stand up and say, like, okay, we know the Republicans are going to block it anyway, but we're going to symbolically introduce this to the House. The Democrats vote for it, and a majority, the act actually passes the House. So it's 218 to 211. Yes to no. So it passes the House. But it's a symbolic vote because the Republicans are going to block it. The assumption is that they're going to block it in the Senate anyway. So we have then in December, we have the oral hearings of the Supreme Court in the 𝗸𝗵-Jackson case. So now the arguments are heard of the pros and the cons, and people are able to contribute to that. The oral hearings are taking place in December. So then because they realize that they have passed this World Women's Health Protection Act, and it's actually an act that tries to protect abortion for women on a federal level. It passes the House, but it needs to pass the Senate. But the problem in the Senate is that the problem is the filibuster. The filibuster, I'm not going to explain that again, even though I did not a good job last time, but I hope perhaps you have looked into that.
In the House or in the Senate?
In the Senate, there's the problem is the filibuster. And the filibuster requires a 60% majority to pass, or not even to pass a law, but to even bring it into debate. So you need to first have a 60% vote, and then after that you're going to vote on the law itself, which only needs 51%, so to speak. But the Republicans have said that they're going to use the filibuster to against this law. So what they did in January, the Democrats, they said like, okay, we want to get rid of the filibuster. So they voted in the Senate. We want to get rid of the filibuster. That was, I think, January 19. Yes, January 19. They voted for the filibuster, and it was not accepted. So the filibuster remained in the Senate. And then in February, in February 28, yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry, the 28th of February 2022. But this is all 2022 here. So the 28th of February, so we're in the same time period as here, in the same week. And now the Women's Health Protection Act is introduced to the Senate. But of course, it is blocked through the filibuster. They could not get a majority on this in the Senate. There's an article here from Vox, which said that the Senate on Monday took its first ever vote on the Women's Health Protection Act, a bill aimed to codify the right to an abortion. Democrats hoped to use the vote to show support for abortion rights as they come under attack in numerous states, and as they face a challenge in the Supreme Court. The vote, as expected, failed. Republicans broadly opposed the legislations and filibustered it, so the bill was unable to advance. The final vote count was 46-48, with all present Democrats except Senator Joe Manchin voting in favor of opening debate on the legislation, and no Republicans doing so. The Senate fell 14 votes short of the 60 necessary to begin the debate on a vote of 46-48. So 14 votes short to even begin the debate. So that is February 28th. Then after that, it was introduced again to the Senate in March, or no, sorry, in May. They tried it again in May. And it didn't work out this time either. It was a little narrower vote. It was now 49 to 51. And then in June, we have 24th of June. We have that Roe v. Wade is overturned. What I said in the presentation earlier this month is that the Democrats started to feel very frustrated, or they started to work on the abortion laws to introduce it, but now they realized they were too late. And I made a comparison with 1863 and the war on slavery, that God was angry with the North because they did not do anything about slavery. And all those years before, they didn't do anything. And now they claimed they wanted to have a war, to fight a war over it. But it was too late. The war was there. But there it was a success. It was a history of failure for the church, and therefore a successful story for the good, for the good message, so to speak, in the world. That in that time slavery was abolished. In this time we're living in a history of success, a history of success for us, and a history of success for the enemies, so to speak, in the world. They're going to succeed, and that means that now abortion is not going to is actually going to be overthrown here on June 24th. So, but there's a whole story before it, which I think is in the part of the story of the increase of knowledge. So I am talking now for almost 1.5 hours, I think. So summarizing, let's see, and maybe I'm going to add some other things, but let's summarize and see what we have. So here, this line, we have 2021. Now we have the increase of knowledge, and I'm suggesting that the increase of knowledge is a period of time in 2022. And on the line, internally, it is June, February to June, starting in February, ending in June. Internally in America, we mark June as well, and you can trace it also back to February or even a little earlier. We can have the King of the North, King of the South battle, United Nations Security Council, starting in February, leading you further into 2022. I would suggest September. Seeing the 273 there as well. So I'm suggesting this is the increase of knowledge of our dispensation leading up to the Sunday law. So then the question that still remains, of course, is what is the Sunday law? Is it 2024? Is it 2025? If you use the logic that is only going to be, here's a 2 years difference, 2 years difference, 1 year, 1 year, then if it's 2021, 2022, then maybe this should be 2023, and this is 2024. That is perhaps the most, if you use this logic. But yeah, we need to be able to prove that, of course. And I'm not going to do that here. I'm at least suggesting that I think this is important to know as well. What is this waymark, the formalization of the message? If this is 2024, what Elder Terry is suggesting, then we need to have at least here, we need a thread for this story as well. Internally in the movement, as externally with the King of the South, or internally in the United States, we need to have this thread. And then I guess logically yeah, maybe not, but logically perhaps this is 2023. But that's, and then only the question mark. If this is 2025, so the other scenario is if this is if this is 2025 or even later, but 2025, which has been on my mind for some time, or it has been at least, and then since 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃 came with her studies, I have been I have not decided, but before 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃 came with her presentation, I actually was thinking that this is going to be 2024, that this period, so that the things that we are facing today, or the elections, or the things that you see now in July, the court case that 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃 has suggested, that could be the formalization leading to the Sunday Law in 2025. I'm not ready to have a definite position on it. I'm listening and I'm looking in the world, but I think we should really take 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗃's study serious, and then also have a suggestion what the increase of knowledge is, because if this is July, so the July 1st court case of 2024, where basically the Supreme Court basically says the United States is a kingdom now, the president is above the law, and then in the same month, what's his name? Trump was crowned as head of the Republican Party. But if that is the Sunday Law, then what is the formalization of the message? It could be a court case regarding Trump, or perhaps something else. I have some thoughts about it, but I'm not going to. I'm not prepared to share that. I haven't prepared that either. But yeah, let me see if I. Oh yeah, something interesting. Yeah, I have some thought. I'm not going to share it because that's going to take another half an hour, I guess, if I do that. I think I'll leave it here for now. Are there any thoughts or questions that you wanted to share or ask?
I have.
Mhm.
It's just going back to something you said earlier when you compared the UN with Egypt.
Yeah.
And my question was, you said that Egypt going to Rome symbolized that Egypt going to Rome and acknowledging them as a state was the same as the UN saying that Biden was right, because both scenarios there's conquered, right? Or
Yes, I think so. Yeah, that's I think what I said. Yeah. That doesn't make sense, or does it make sense?
I can see the conquered in both. I think that's just it, because it's more that because in one scenario we see Rome being the US being acknowledged as a state, and in the other part we just say that Biden was right, kind of. So I understand it on a level that it's conquered, but so my question was, is that it, or is there more to the story about? Yeah, maybe that's not the question.
Yeah, no, I get your point. I actually know what you mean, and I thought about that too. But saying Egypt sends ambassadors to Rome. If Egypt is the whole world,
Yeah.
and Rome is Rome, then they're getting conquered, right? In some way, if they join hands and say like, okay, we're friends now. So I get your point. It's a little. I can see the conquered in there, and ambassadors. Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome is a little more difficult to see, but I thought it was. Yes.
It's not that I necessarily see an issue. It was just more to get clarification because I think it's two different stories, but with similar principles or
Yes,
same.
it's two different symbols.
Yeah.
And maybe they're illustrated by the same thing.
Yeah.
And that is that the world stands up against Russia, and you can see. I'm suggesting you can see conquered in it, but you can also see Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome, because Rome was already defeated the king of the south, basically, or was imperium in 2021. And now the rest of the world said, oh, actually, you were right. Good job. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a little stretch, but I could see the Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome in there. But the Concord, definitely, yeah.
And Egypt is symbolized by the world, and the world is in conquer. That Rome now is taking a place of a world power at this moment, because
Yeah, that's also the thing.
they defeated virus.
But that's, I think, difficult to see because we were already acknowledging USA as a world power. So that's
Yes, but now maybe as a single, or that it's also marking the beginning, because that's what you see here in this dispensation. Also the rise of the United States as a single dictator of the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
But in one
So-
case, Egypt is saying, hey Rome, you are now, you have proven to be a world power, but also they celebrated, or they acknowledged together, Pyrrhus, the king of the south, is defeated. You could also say, when you look at from the other way, from the king of the south's perspective. And if you take that perspective to our time, you say, okay, the king of the south is defeated, and now the whole world is in concord to say, yeah, you are right, king of the south, we cannot believe it, they're only telling lies, and they are now invading, and no one is supporting it.
Yes, I'm not sure if you could say that the literal Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome means that Rome was a superpower now in that time period. I don't think Rome was not yet a superpower, but I think they were just
right.
But they saw
they were rising into.
saw some perspective.
Yeah, they realized they needed to deal with it. You better be friends with them.
Is sending ambassadors from Egypt to Rome also on the line of that story a concord waymark?
Yes, that's 273.
And 273 is a concord.
Yes,
Yeah,
273 is Concord.
wow, that's even
You have the Battle of Lexington and Concord. 273 casualties lining up here at Concord. And we have 273 here because of X-27. And that's the reason why we mark it as Concord, because in X-27 it's not so clear what waymark 273 is. Elder Tess said it's between 2021 and the Sunday Law. And then she said it is Concord because of the 273 casualties.
But then it must be.
Yeah.
There's no clean game doing it.
Okay.
And
Somehow.
Maybe for the video close.
shall we close with prayer, and then we perhaps can talk with after that. Yeah. Okay. Lord, we come before you at the end of our study to thank you for the time and the good connection, the time we could share together in thinking about and discussing these important subjects. Lord, I pray that there might be something beneficial in it for us. If there's anything that is not correct or mistaken, then we pray that you help us to reveal it to us as well, and that it might become more clear to see those histories. I pray that we as a movement may come into unity and an agreement of the truth. And I pray that this presentation may contribute to a better understanding of the times we're living in, and a better understanding of who you are. I pray for a continued blessing upon this Sabbath for all of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I just